So that technique we just went through, you can use that all over the place in the application, wherever you have a foreign key, right? A select with a drop-down list type of thing. One of the twists on that situation that can come up is, what about if you're working with a many-to-many? Now, I wouldn't really worry about this with checkboxes, but when you have the two list boxes, this is something that, quite likely might come up at that point in time. So I have a little discussion here and a solution for that, right? We want to quickly be able to add a new option, even if we have those two list boxes with, selected and available options side by side, and we move them back and forth between them. Now, it really is the same idea. In fact, we actually are using select controls in that interface normally, right? Although they're set up as multi-select, but that's okay. We can work with that just the same, okay? But there is an added complication, right? The fact that there might be some that are already in the selected column, so to speak, of the selected box, right? Where if we're going to add a new one, obviously it would be added to the available, right? And then you might select it. But the problem is, if we do a link query going to get the data, naturally we go and we get all the data. So if we kind of didn't think about it much, what would easily happen is we'd go refresh with all the options that there are in the database and put them all in the available options. Well, that could lead to duplication. If the sum of the options were already chosen in the selected list box, right, then they would be in both. And they'd stay there, right? Move them back and forth all you want, but they'll stay there. So that's not a good thing. In fact, it's bad, right? So how can we solve that? Well, one thought I had is we'll just, like right now we have code that populates those two controls based on the current values stored in the database. Well, I thought you could just go back and do that again, just with after adding the new value. But no, that's no good, because they might have already made changes. They could have, shifted one from one to the other and back and forth, right? So it's no longer even reflects what's in the database anymore. So we can't rely on that being accurate. So I finally came up with a solution that I think works, and that is to actually basically build a list of the values of all the ones that are currently in the selected box. So when we go back after adding a new one and re-query to get all of the available options, just skip over those ones, right? If they're currently in the selected box, we'll skip them and not add them to the available box. Does that make sense? If it's a little fuzzy because of the language I'm using, it'll probably come clearer as we go ahead and actually do this, right? Okay, so it really is similar, and we can reuse our same, that first bit of JavaScript, our refresh drop-down list. We can reuse that same code without touching or changing it at all, right? It's just on how we kind of handle the business of the two list boxes instead, right? So feel free to follow along with the copy and paste file. All right, so the example I thought we'd work with in this case is actually the specialties for the doctor, right? Right now we have that. We can bring up the specialties and either edit or create of a doctor and assign what specialties they have, okay? So we're going to do the same kind of thing. A lot of repetition in a sense over what we did last time, but we'll get to the point where we actually have to handle things a little differently because of the unique situation. So I'm going to be working with the doctor controller. I'm going to be working with the specialty controller. And we're going to be, of course, working inside the doctor views, right? So the new partial views we're going to create, it makes sense to put them in here because they're just used in relation to the doctor, right? So following the same kind of approach, I'm going to make my create form, first of all. So I'll add a new view. Okay, it'll be a partial view. I'm going to call it underscore specialty create. I'll just do an empty one because I have the code right ready to go, but you can see the process from our last example if you had to do it from scratch. Okay, here we are. All right, so again, you have added an ID for the form. It actually has controller is specialty, action is create, right? We've changed the span to this div, same ID error list, okay? And of course, added an ID to the actual submit button so we can grab the click event and take control there, right? Good. Now we need our modal itself, so I'll right click, we'll add another view, it will be my add specialty modal. And in a sense, it's the same code as the last example, just the names have been changed to make it more appropriate. No, protect the innocent? No. The names have been changed for specialty app. Helps if I copy the right bit of code to paste in, right? Okay, there's my add specialty modal, right? So again, it's the same layout. In the modal body, we have our specialty create partial view. We're going to load in here. We're going to pass in a new specialty model object, right, to satisfy the requirement to have the strongly typed view here. Okay, now that's done. So we'll come to our specialty controller next, right? And in the create post, we're going to add code in case there's ever a validation error on the server side, right? Now, I don't have a unique constraint here, so it's a lot less likely, but it is possible there could be an error of some sort, okay? So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll decide, hey, is this an AJAX request, and do I have an error to return? If I do, right, then I will add all the errors into my error message, return a bad request, and pass the error message along, okay? So if there's any validation, so this would include anything coming from my validatable object, anything that came from the database with some sort of DB update exception, right, would cause there to be a model error added to the model state. Okay, so that's all we need in the specialty controller, right? Now let's come to the doctor controller. What we have here right now, it's a little different, right, because we have our populate assigned specialty. This is what prepares the two lists of available options and selected options, right, based on what is in the database and so on, okay? So that's what we have to work with. So we're going to have to do much of the work preparing the select list for the available options on our own, right? So I'm going to actually just copy and paste my code in here. And of course, we're also going to want to have something that returns just our JSON result, right? So I can call my doctor as a controller, my get specialties, okay, and then get my JSON payload back containing the select list of all the specialties that I should have in my available list, right? So notice that we're passing a string here I'm calling skip, okay? It is going to be a delimited list of the primary key values of all the ones that I want to skip, that I don't want to add to the available list because they're already in the selected list. That's the idea. So when I call this, notice we're building a select list like normal. It makes no difference if you're using a multi-select or a basic select, right? You still use a select list data structure here, okay? So I pass in my skip as well. My initial query, pretty straightforward, just context.specialties, okay? Added the as no tracking, so it's an iQueryable. Then we decide, do we need to add a where clause, right? So if we were given any values in our skip as part of the request here, right, then I'm going to split, okay, that string based on the delimiter character, okay, and that'll give me my array of strings, the values to avoid. Now I need to convert them, okay, because right now they're string values. They might look like integers, but they're strings. So I do an array convert all to convert all those strings, parsing them, okay, one at a time into an integer, int.parse. And that gives you my integer array of skip keys. Those are the primary key values of all the ones I don't want to include in this query. So I don't want to include them, so I just have my where clause where it's not true that my integer array skip keys contains the actual ID of the specialty, right? And that would leave all of those out of the data that's returned. Then when I actually build the select list, okay, there's my query that has the where clause added if necessary. And at that point, I can just order it so it's in alphabetical order by specialty name, right? And that's it. Other than that, it's just building a select list. ID is the internal value. Specialty name is what's shown. And away we go. And that gets returned here in JSON format down to the client. Okay. So now let's come back to the actual doctor views, right? So that is in both the create and the edit view. So I'll get, maybe I'll Yeah, I think I can close all this. I'll come to the create and the edit view. We have the same arrangement in both here, pretty much. Down here we have our two, list boxes, right? Now set up for multi-select, but that doesn't really matter, right? So there's our ones that are accredited, those are the ones that are selected, and then this is that's why we call it the selected options, the available options. That's the one we're going to refresh once we actually add it here, right? So there's a couple things. A little thing is I found, especially when I added, I couldn't think of a way to do like a prepended button here nicely, right? So instead I'm just going to add a basic button to click. So that button, I'm just going to put it right beside the one here for the choose specialties for our available options list. Okay, just a couple hard non-breaking spaces, then a button, This is going to, better add the partial view for the modal. Missed that, But so my target is my add specialty modal, right? Toggle modal. So when I click this button, that will bring that up. It just says add specialty inside the button. I'll go get that in a second. If I forget, remind me. But while I'm here, there's another little change. I found when I stuck this button on top or right above the list box, it just was a little too close. I wanted a bit more space between them. So I can do that here when we use our HTML helper to build this. See that we're passing, these become HTML attributes that we're passing, right? So I want to add another one. I want to add a style to give a little bit of a top margin to the actual list box. And I'm going to do it in both so that it matches, right? So they both line up underneath each other in the same way. Okay, now, remember the rule about adding the partial view, because it contains a form, you got to make sure that it's above the actual opening form tag here. There we go. Coming to create, might as well get that done first. Come down here. I'm going to add, first of all, I'm going to add that little top margin to each of these so that the spacing looks a little better. And of course, I need to add my same button for adding a specialty. Okay. All right. So the only thing left really is the JavaScript. Now it's very much the same as the JavaScript we just used, right? Notice we already have one here. We have our multi-select. That's the one that we added earlier to manage moving the options back and forth between the two list boxes, right? So we'll need, and it's almost the same as the code. The only thing that's, again, changed for the most part are the names of the innocent, or the, the names of the different elements, right? Because we're working with specialties as opposed to medical trials, right? So let me just get it in place in both before I mess up my copy paste. Then I just want to review a couple basic things here. First of all, notice the first thing we do is we once again are going to use our refresh drop-down list, right? Okay. And then it's the same approach. We have our submit button, which has the ID submit specialty create. Okay, so we grab the click event, we prevent default, we clear errors, we grab the form itself, we do the client-side validation, and if it's valid, then we come in here, we prepare our AJAX request, the post, the action, serialize is all the same up to that point in time, right? And then if we have success, we hide the modal and away we go, right? But if there's an error, actually this is all the same. The error stuff is all the same down to here. What's mainly different, okay, is when we hide the modal, right, we have to do a bit more work. Okay, so our get element by ID, right, we reset the form, we clear the errors, right, but we're gonna, okay, remember after we hide the form because we've actually added the new option to show in our list, right? So to go and refresh the list, which is what we're gonna do down here, we need to decide, are there any options in the selected options list? So that's what this code is about. I prepare an empty string, okay, for my query string parameters here, and I go to the selected options, okay, and I grab all the options, and that gives you my skip data. So it's a series of strings, right? So I loop through for each one, or objects, basically, yeah. They're the selected option. They're option objects. Sorry, not a string, option objects. So I grab the value of each one, concatenate that with our pipe character, and build up a string that way. So it'll look in quotes like 27, pipe, 21, pipe, 33, whatever, right? That's what it'll look like. It's the IDs of all the options that are in that selected list. So the URI is going to be my /doctor, /, that's my one that returns the get JSON result, okay? My get specialties, and skip equals that string. Now, the slice is just to remove the final pipe character, right? I don't want in there when I send it up. So I'm just taking that last one off because it just adds one to the end of each value. And that's it. So then we're calling our good old familiar friend refresh drop-down list, right? Okay, available options is the ID of the actual list that we want to refresh the data for. Our URI has this, all the values to skip, if there are any, right? True, because we want to show no data available, because it's possible that there's nothing, nothing to show. Everything is currently selected. Not likely, unless they failed or didn't actually add something. But anyway, just in case, right? And then no, we don't need to have a prompt at the top, so I make that false. And I'm not going to bother trying to have it fade out and fade back in, right? And that's it. So that's the only real change here. So, you know, if we wanted to, we could do something similar. Let's just try to cause some kind of an error. Maybe I'm going to come to the class here. Since I don't have a database error to show, let me get my medical trial. I'm just going to use the exact same I-validatable object thing here for a specialty. Again, I know it's totally silly, but it's just so I can show having an error, right? And of course, don't forget, this is something that students lost marks on the test. They added the code for I-validatable object, but they forgot to implement it, right? So it doesn't see it and never will, oh, of course I got to change this. It's not name, it's specialty name, right? Okay, so I'm not allowed to put the Scottish Plays name in as a specialty or have a character length 7 specialty either. Okay, let's give it a test. See how much I mess this up. Okay. I'm not going to, you know that works, so I'm not going to mess around with that. I'll just log in as an admin. We'll come into doctors. We'll just edit somebody. So see, these three are here, right? So if I add a new, oh, I have an extra character there. I'll have to fix that. But if I just go ahead and add a specialty here, again, we have our validation, right? There it is. It showed up, AAA, right? Now, if I try to, oh, no, I don't have duplication. Okay, Macbeth. Oh, I said it aloud. Good thing I'm not in a theater. There we go. So I'm getting all my feedback from the errors from my I-validatable object. Good. I just wanted to show that that part is still working. If there actually was any hope of a database error, that could show up as well, right? Okay. Now, one thing besides fixing that, you know, I tried this. And for a split second, I thought, oh, crap. I mean, oh, dude, it didn't work. Alphabetical order. It's case sensitive, right? So capital letters come before lowercase letters by default. By the way, if you want to make it case insensitive, that's easily done. I don't even think I have to stop running, right? Let me come back to the doctor controller. That code we added down here, right? Remember, we added the order by specialty name, okay? Now, I can do this. I can go to lower or to upper. It wouldn't matter, right? And the point is, though, it's sorting it by that lowercase version, right? But it's not actually changing the data, Okay, there's no change to the actual data itself. So let's see if this allows me to do a hot reload. It did. Okay. So now you see the small letters are there. Okay. Oh, I'll do small letter A. Aardvark is 7 letters. I'm just going to add an extra K. All right. So you see that it plunked it right in the middle here, okay, because it's ignoring the case altogether. It's just doing it in order by the letters, irregardless of case. So that's just a little thing I thought I'd mention in case you ever wanted to do something like that. It doesn't matter if you did 2 upper or 2 lower. It's just in terms of the comparison for the order by, it won't make any difference anymore. Any questions? I got to fix that. It's bugging the heck out of me. Okay, so that is back here. That was on the edit page, I think. So I must have a spurious angle bracket there somewhere. Where is it hiding? Ah, right there. Do I have that on the create page as well? No. Okay, just on the edit page. Let me just make sure. Yeah, there it is gone. And if I go back to create, so you see that why I wanted that little bit of a margin there above it. Otherwise, the top of this box was almost touching the bottom of the buttons, right? So I think that looks a little better. In fact, I think I like it better whether I'd added this new add specialty button or not. I like that little bit of a margin up top. So, all right, that finishes the lecture for today. Any questions? There we go. And if we had some options chosen, then they won't get added yet again, even if we add a new specialty here of any type, right? That's it. Whew, that was a lot of material to get through today. So yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the class. There's only 5 minutes left, but if anyone has any questions or wants to ask about anything at all, I'll be happy to entertain your questions.